Hello guys and welcome to a brand new video. Today I will be talking about the latest chapters in Nikke and the latest event as well. You know, the anniversary event that we had, not anniversary, sorry, the half anniversary event that we had recently with TT Star. So I'm going to talk about both of them and yeah, as always, Nikke did it again. They made one of the best chapters again, especially the recent event, the TT Star event that we had. Now I'm going to talk about the TT Star event later. First, let me talk about chapter number 45 and 46, which was the recent chapters that we had. And yes, so Nikke's main story has been going crazy for a while, one after the other. We've been getting revelations, we've been getting developments. We had the whole Anis's development. We had almost at the same time we had Neon's development, and them getting new powers and everything, new abilities, a new body and all that, all those things. And is getting the pretty, I forgot what it is called, the armament that she got, the lucky star armament, which was made from Pretty's body. Like that. And Neon getting an upgrade. GN sorted her out with a few things. And all these things going pretty crazy. The whole development with Only One and the four beasts, and then the queen. Oh my god. Things are going crazy. So chapter 45, we had the whole 6-0 situation, which was finally completed. 6-0 is gone, I think, for good, I guess. And yeah, but it had one, I think it was chapter 45, right? It had one of the craziest sections of which related to Liverin and Fragile. So that was one of the craziest sections over there, where now this is the thing. Liverin has been a character which, I don't know, most people hate, who have played the game. And obviously, it makes sense why, because Liverin is one of those characters that are not evil in that sense, but their actions are disgusting, you could say. It's a type of character that never learns, and it's not that she is not learning because of some reason. She's deliberately not attempting to learn, and she's bound by habit to always go back to the things that she has not been told to do, and it doesn't matter what it is connected with. She's a coward. She is a character who plays the victim, all throughout. She is probably one of those character archetypes that you hate more than even the villains. There are characters like this, in certain shows. And it's very interesting to see how there have been so many great villains and everything. In I'm going to talk about another villain later on. There's been so many villains which was one of the best, in their own regards and everything. And then there's Liverin, who's not really a villain in that sense, but her actions are put her at a lower tier than even villains. you know and this has been continuing for how long? For so long. I don't even remember when Liverin was introduced to the story. And at the very beginning, we didn't really understand her whole personality and everything. But then as we kept watching what she kept doing, at first she was like, oh, I made a mistake, oopsie. And then we are like, all right, fine, it's okay. And then next again she's like, oh, I did another mistake, oopsie. And this continued, and it continued so much that at one point you realize that, oh, she's one of those characters. She's going to keep going back to the same path even after so many people forgives her and gives her another chance. And the worst part about it is that she doesn't learn, and she always plays the victim. Whenever she does something bad, she's like, oh, this happened, that happened, there's nothing I could do, don't worry about it, I'll change. And then the next time you give her a chance, and the next time she does the same damn thing again. And then even after 6-0 was gone, which was the main reason why apparently she was saying oh, this was because of 6-0. Even after 6-0 was gone, she still try to do something with that crystal, that E2 crystal. And that was it. That's when you realize that, nah, this girl will never change. She's one of those characters that will never change. And what Fragile did after that was one of the craziest things, and it's probably, I don't know, it went in a very bad direction, but at the same time, like, she said she's going to do it, and she did it. There was a section when Fragile said that if I see you doing something like this one more time, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to take my own life. And she exactly did that. Like, it's something that, when she said before, you're like, oh yeah, it's like she's that serious. But then when this scene came up, you're like, oh damn, she was not joking. Like, because there's been a lot of times in a lot of shows, stories, and everything where characters have said similar things, but it never ends up happening either way because of some other reason. So it's just something that when she said, you kind of listen to it and you're like, okay, she's that serious. But in your head, you never really thought that a time will come when she's actually going to do this. Like, it was just one of those things that you say when but she actually did it. As soon as she sees Liverin, even after everything, like, even after, like, there's no reason for her to, use that E2 crystal again, but she takes the E2 crystal and then when Fragile catches her doing that, she starts making excuses. She's like, oh no, like, I'm not going to do anything about this. Trust me, this time this will be different. Like, this time, like, you can use this E2 crystal as a leverage. We can use this, like, sell it for money and all these things. And Fragile is just looking at her. And then she just shoots her in the neck, grabs her, puts her into the box, throws the E2 crystal inside of it, and then takes her own life. And it happened so fast. And it happened, like, I don't know, with no, like, prior warning. It happened, like, so fast that all the things happened. You're just baffled watching what the hell just happened. Like, it was insane. That whole scene took, I think, like, how much? Like, not even 5 minutes. It took like 2 minutes for all those things to escalate. And I feel like that is another way they, like, heightened the tension of that section, because like I don't know, you expect that whole section to go a little bit slowly, but it just happens. And by the end of that section, you're just like, oh my god, what the hell did I witness? Like, yeah, she said she was going to do it, and she did it. But still, it's just baffling. And yeah, that's basically what happened. So Liverin obviously was one of the most hated characters in the game after people started realizing and clocking what type of character she is. She's one of those characters who you give a second chance, third chance, fourth chance, and they say that they will improve. They say they'll be okay, and they don't. They make excuses. They play as the victim, and they're like, oh, this is not because of me and all that. And they never change. And then one day you realize that, oh, this person is never going to change. They're going to keep going back to their habit. That is their habit. Like, and it's just going to be there. Like, like, she'll never change. It's one of those characters. So, what do you do to one of those characters? Well, Fragile demonstrated it. So yeah, obviously obviously the worst part about this is, like, Fragile is also dead now. So yeah, like, crazy. But like, that was, like, one of the most insane part of that section of chapter 45, right? Yeah, 45. So yeah, so that was that. And we also had that whole battle between, I don't remember which chapter exactly that was, whole battle between Only One and Queen. Crazy. That one, like, shot was absolutely crazy, where, like, Only One's just sitting like this, and Queen is like, like, like that 2 parts. Queen got beaten up by Only One so badly, like, that Levi had to come, and Levi was like, stop, don't do this, Only One. Like, and obviously, like, I've seen a lot of people discuss about that scene, but at the end of the day, what Levi did was necessary. Like, Only One should not be let to kill the Queen, because if she ends up dipping her hands in that direction, if she ends up going in that path, if she ends up staining her hand, like, there's a high chance of her going in that direction, of being like, oh, this, like, person I don't like, I'm just going to kill them, you know because, as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. As a kid, she's the strongest character in Nikke now. As a, how old is she? Maybe like 1 year old or something. As a 1 year old, she's the strongest character in the game. So if she, obviously, if she killed the queen at that time, like, a lot of things wouldn't be a problem anymore. Queen would be gone, like, a lot of peace and everything. But one thing is going to happen if she did that. She would at that young age, she would be like, oh, you know what, I didn't like that character and I killed them, and everything worked out. So from here onwards, I'm going to do the same for anyone that I don't like. And that would be the worst case scenario, because she's the strongest character and she's young, she's impressionable. At that age, if she ends up going in that direction, she's going to take that for granted. And as she grows up, anyone that she's not going to like, she's just going to end up killing them. And you know what's going to happen as she grows older? And I don't know how she's going to grow older, like, how even that's going to work. But whatever, like, she would be a threat to humanity again. And even a worse one than the current queen. And Levi stopped that from happening. And hopefully, like, the four beasts can keep stopping any of these things. Like, if this happened way later, when she was, like, an adult and she knows how to make a decision, what is good, what is bad, then you could have given her the choice to, do whatever with the queen. Not at this age. Like I said, this age is very impressionable. So what Levi did is absolutely correct. And I think she saved the world, basically, of another monster. She saved the world. You should give Levi a round of applause. Because if she didn't do this, like, only one would have become a huge threat to humanity in the upcoming years. So yeah, like, that's what I have to say about that whole Only One and Levi situation. So yeah, it was one of the craziest scenes, obviously. Like, the battle was absolutely insane. So yeah. Now, then comes, I think, chapter 46, where we have the whole Dorothy section with Doban, one of the most annoying characters in the game. I'm glad he's gone now. Like, like, absolutely insane. When they started showing his backstory, I'm like, please don't. Please don't give me some sob story of, like, trying to put sympathy on him. Yeah, he had a tough past. But the thing about his backstory is that what he does makes you kind of be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, whatever. Anyways, let's move on. That's basically his backstory. You know that meme where you kind of like, there's like, oh, what? And then you're like, okay, moving on. His backstory is basically that. Like, it's kind of like that, in my opinion, because, and I'm glad it's like that, because, like, come on, I don't want some, like, sorry backstory about him, like, struggling and then, like, going through crazy stuff, and, like, like, circumstances pushed him to do this and all that. I don't want any of those nonsense. Doban was a vile character, and I'm glad they ended it that way, because his backstory kind of started in a way where you thought that it is going to try to gather sympathy from us, but the actions that he took in his backstory later on, it kind of made you feel like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, like, he deserves what he's going to get. So it was very mediocre, and I'm glad it is mediocre. I don't want Doban getting like a like a neon level backstory or something. Like, no, stop it. So yeah, so that's what happened with Doban. Doban's gone, I'm glad. And obviously the whole section with Dorothy, which kind of highlighted how Dorothy, even after, like, going through so much things, she still never wanted to hurt humanity. Because if she wanted to do it, she could have done it immediately. Why go through all these long roundabout song and dance about, like, oh, like, I'm going to destroy the ark by, taking, like, everything away from them, this and that. If if you really wanted revenge, Dorothy would have come here and wiped out the Ark if she wanted to. But she went this roundabout way and all of that. Like as they kind of explained later on. I think it was Anderson who explained it later. You know, and he's like, you did all of this because there was a part of you that didn't want to hurt them. That you wanted to, you had hope for humanity. You wanted to save them. You know, and even at the end, like when Dorothy was going to pull her trigger on Doban, she didn't. She didn't do it. It was Birmingham, right? Yeah, I think so. It was Birmingham. Birmingham was just flap like, and yeah, um, so there you go. That was that. And oh my god, Birmingham like was so good in this whole like section as well. Him kind of like saluting Dorothy and telling him, oh no, it was not Anderson, sorry, it was Birmingham who told Dorothy all of this. Yeah, I kind of mixed it up. So like Birmingham just going being Birmingham, absolute absolutely great character. Just like saluting Dorothy and telling her that this is reality. You didn't want to hurt them, even though you have every right to take everything away from people from the Ark who took everything from you. And then the revelation that Oswald actually like exiled them because he ultimately wanted them alive, because if the Goddess Squad came back, something would have happened and they would have taken them out, the central government. And Oswald didn't want that. That's why he kind of exiled them to save them. And all those things, like everything that like Dorothy got to know after that. And then obviously like I said, Birmingham's salute for her, like saluting her for still being a goddess of victory. And then Anderson's reveal, like oh, look, I'm alive. And yeah, that part was very emotional. Obviously Dorothy was like, yeah. And one of the best sections, Dorothy's, I guess you could say, like that whole section kind of like really made Dorothy again one of the best characters. And I remember a few chapters past, people were hating on Dorothy, and now everyone was like, okay, you know what, this is a good way of kind of concluding Dorothy's whole revenge arc and like everything. And I think like at the end they kind of proposed Dorothy to kind of come to the counters or something. I don't know what she's going to do or whatever like it's going to happen. I don't think she's going to come to the counters. She's probably going to go back to like the pilgrims, her Goddess Squad and all that. I don't know what's going to happen, but at least like she'll be our ally now, after everything that happened. Like she's always been our ally, because like I said, if you think about it, like Dorothy has always been like, I'll take everything from Ark, I'll do this and I'll do that. And he like invested her time and everything on Eden, because she was like, oh, I'm going to bring the Ark people here, I'm going to take everything away from Ark. But her way of taking everything away from Ark never, if you think about it, involved any kind of killing people, any kind of doing something bad. And people, the thing that you usually do in revenge like things, she was like, oh no, I'm going to do this which is going to make the Ark like miserable, instead of just going and blasting them up and just killing them or doing something which usually people would have done if you want revenge. Like go to the like the central government and like take them out or something. Instead of doing any of that, instead of harming anyone, putting people in danger or anything, she made this roundabout way of teaching Ark a lesson, at which ultimately shows that she still held like love for humanity. Otherwise, she wouldn't have done this. At the same time, there has been so many situations where Dorothy actually helped us. The whole nihilistic situation where Dorothy actually came and helped us. Like the whole like Indivilia situation and a lot of situations, if you remember, Dorothy actually helped us. Like like protected the people and everything. So it actually like kind of like all comes together at the end, and you realize that yeah, Dorothy, like she just never, she was just bad at how she wanted to express her like feelings, and she just like went in a wrong direction a little bit, but her heart was still the same, that kind of thing. And yeah, so I guess people who were not happy with Dorothy for the past few chapters, I've I've been seeing so many memes about, like, with the whole Eden Spear chapter, after the Eden Spear chapter, after the fighting, like Eden getting decimated and everything. So many people, when Johan was like, "Get out, Dorothy. We don't need you anymore." All those, like, after those chapters, I've seen so many memes of people just being like, "Ah, serves you right, Dorothy." But now, like, obviously people understand, and like, yeah, there you go. So Dorothy is, like, I guess you could say she's content now with how everything has gone, and and people actually supporting her realizing a lot of the truths that she never got to know about, the whole Oswald situation, and like Anderson is alive, all these things, she got to know, and she's like, now, like, okay, right. And yeah, so those were the chapters. Those were like the highlights of chapter 45 and 46. Obviously, no amount of, like, praise is enough for characters like Oswald, Birmingham, Anderson. Like, it's like all of them are so good characters. Like, like, and just, like, it just, obviously, like, on the other things as well that happened, like, like the shocking part of Fragile and, like, Liverine situation, like Dorothy's, like, whole section where she finally found peace, you could say. uh, so Anderson being alive and that revelation in front of Dorothy, all these things, yeah, makes it so good. And like I said, like, past few chapters, Birmingham has been on a streak. He has been on a streak of being one of the craziest, like, goated characters. Oswald was always a really good character, goated character, and then Birmingham has, like, pulled up the, pulled that up, and now he's carrying that whole thing. Um, so yeah, there you go. So that was the story chapters, main story chapters. Let's talk about the TT like star event that happens immediately after those two chapters, because at the end, like, Mustang was like, "Oh, let's make a concert." Like, Anis is, like, like, going to have, like, a concert at the end, like a farewell concert, you could say, kind of like that for Anis. And then the TT Star event happens. And now let me talk about the TT Star event. Now the TT Star event, the previous, like, the one that we got to see, where we saw little glimpses of, like, Mustang, the evil Mustang. And a lot of people kind of speculated that, oh, this Mustang is going to get a redemption arc. I always said that that's never going to happen, because in no way they're going to make a scumbag like Mustang, the old Mustang, redeem himself. There have been crazy hints about Hanson being the current Mustang, with the voice actor situation, with his affection for Pretty, which we already saw, which, Hanson, like, liked Pretty before, and, like, a lot of other things kind of pointed in that direction. But there were still people saying, like, oh, he's gonna get a redemption, and I was like, please don't give someone like that a redemption arc or whatever. And yeah, like, it went exactly as I thought. Like, like, I thought, like, yeah, obviously this current Hanson is somehow going to get, like not current Hanson, sorry, Hanson is going to somehow get Mustang's position and take his place, and that's exactly what happened. It was predictable. However, the way they pulled it off was absolutely insane, and it's still one of my best, like, like the parts of the event is where Hanson comes in, and, like, Mustang is like, oh, after the revelation that apparently Hanson is Mustang's son. That's another crazy revelation which I was not able to predict. And then Hanson is like, comes to comes to the hospital, and Mustang is, like, there for some kind of, like, cure, like, that's going to cure his, like, like, some life-threatening disease or whatever it was, and apparently a cure has been made, which is going to make him, like, even more, like, like, he's going to be alive and all that. And Hanson comes in, and Hanson is like, I'm going to become you, and he's like, oh, so what are you going to do, like, like, after becoming me? You're going to do your entertainment that you talk about, like, making people happy. That's not true entertainment. And true entertainment is when you see other people suffering, at the expense of those suffering, you are, like, you kind of heighten yourself up. That is true entertainment, according to Mustang. And he's like, yours is not true entertainment. And and Hanson is like, yeah, That is, if that's what you think, like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to take your position, and I'm going to show what true entertainment is. And he's like, so what are you going to do, kill me? Like, I'm not going to give you my, like my cure. And then one of the craziest scenes where Hansen kind of comes to his ears, and he's like, like, don't you think it's going to be very entertaining if 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 you die and I take your position, which I hate the most, take your position and act like you for the rest of my life, act like a clown, you know, and take your position. The person I hate the most, I become that person. Wouldn't that be entertaining to you? Mustang is like, you know what? That's truly entertaining. Bam! Throws the vial away, destroys the whole cure. He's like, there you go, my son. Like, enjoy your life. And I'm going to be, seeing how you suffer. This is true entertainment. Watching people suffer, even if it's from my grave. And Hansen's like, yes, you do that. And when I reach true entertainment, I'm going to come to your grave and I'm going to spit on it. Mustang's like, true entertainment. And yeah, one of the craziest sections in the event, and that was absolutely insane. This is how you make a villain. He was so true to his methods and ideologies that he didn't even spare himself from it. That is what a true villain is. And you know what? As a villain, one of the best characters, the old Mustang, as a villain, he's a true villain. Unlike freaking Liverin, who just got what she deserved, I guess. And this is what I was saying a few moments ago, that, you have characters like Liverin, which is just absolute, playing the victim, doing this, that, ooh, I don't know what to do, I'm the victim, save me, and then going back to the same path and making more excuses. And then we have Mustang, who, up until the end, was a true villain, and according to his ideologies as a villain, he didn't even spare himself. He was ready to die, just to see entertainment, according to him, his own definition of entertainment. He didn't even spare himself from that. And that is what a true villain is supposed to be like. And they nailed it with Mustang. So absolute insane part. I don't think I'll ever forget that part in my life. That whole Mustang and Hanson scene. It's crazy. Oh my god. And yeah, and obviously, other than that, the whole TT Star event, we saw the whole smile box incident, which we kind of briefly saw before in one of the main stories, but now it was clearly kind of showed how disgusting that was, and how it pushed Anis on leaving, how the whole this, all of this was kind of hinted before, where they apparently said Anis hit someone, and now we know who it was. It was Yo-Yo who she hit, and completely, and that's why she left. And then Prika and Mint were like, we're going to keep continuing to be in the showbiz business up until Anis comes back, and then we'll come back again. And that's what they did. They waited for Anis, and now Anis is back after getting the pretty armament and saving the ark. And now, as a farewell way, she she said goodbye with a little bit of a concert. After that, obviously she's part of the Countess, she's going to stay with us. So it's like a graduation, what they call graduation ceremony for idols, kind of like that for her, as we saw. And with along all of that, we also had the whole flashback with Mustang and everything as well. That ending part where Hanson becomes Mustang, and he kind of reveals himself truly in front of pretty not pretty, sorry, Mint, Prika, and Anis at the end of the concert. They already knew, obviously, but that whole scene was there. Yeah. So overall, it was absolutely fantastic. Really good. And it fleshed out all those things that we saw in one of the previous chapters, because Anis's story was kind of briefly brushed through in the main story, but this kind of really showed what happened, from the beginning to the end. What happened, who was Anis, what type of situation she faced at school, how she got inspired by Pretty, and then she died in the stampede, and then she became an idol, and then like that whole thing with the Mustang and everything. Hanson being like, I have to do something and save them. I wasn't able to save Pretty, but I have to save these girls. um and then the smile box incident, which was absolutely abhorrent, the worst thing. Annie's lashing out at Yo-Yo, and then finally, like Hanson taking Mustang's place and waiting for Anis to come back. And yeah, so great conclusion to that, and like one of the best half anniversary stories. You know, like I said, I'll never forget the Hanson and Mustangs, that whole part. It's forever ingrained in my brain, and was one of the best parts of the story. Uh, right. So yeah, there you go. I just wanted to talk about this. These are like like these few chapters and events have been like on a generational like run, and it's continuing to get better and better and better. And it's like keeping up the quality. I hope this continues, and like yeah, like this has been amazing. These few like chapters for Nikke and these few events for Nikke has been absolutely amazing. Nikke is at the best place it could have ever been story wise. You know, and yeah, let's hope this continues. I'm sure this will continue because Nikke has like Nikke's story has always been very appealing to me, and I don't know why, but there's something in this Nikke story which really draws you in, and like it's like really like captures your attention. It's not bloated. I think this is one thing that I really like about Nikke's story. Like a lot of like stories, like be it anime or whatever, has a lot of great stories, but a lot of them are kind of bloated. Like they kind of like bloat up the thing with unnecessary stuff, like unnecessary dialogue and everything. I'm sure you know which game I'm talking about. Like certain games that bloat the story, even if there's like a really good story behind it, the bloatiness of it kind of like lowers the excitement and everything. I don't think I've ever seen Nikke do that, like at least not in the main story. you know I've never. They put the bare minimum of bloatiness, and the ones that is only required, and every single thing is to the point, which makes the experience so good. I feel like every single moment of the story, you're like really at the kind of like the midst of everything, and it's like very important, and he's very good. So yeah, like that really enhances the experience, I feel like. And obviously the storytelling is absolutely phenomenal. Like so, like yeah, Nikke has been at a great place. It has been improving constantly, like from day one. And yeah, I'm looking forward to an even better future for Nikke. So that is it. I'm gonna end this video here. Thanks for watching, guys. I just wanted to talk about these two, like the event and the main story chapters. I don't really do my Nikke gameplay or anything because I just want to enjoy it myself, like on my own, kind of. Like and making videos on it will kind of like, because like the thing about Nikke is like I just sit down and I just go through the whole damn thing. I remember it was like on the day of, like, I think like when chapter 45 and 46 came out, on the same day I completed it. If I had to make videos on it, I would need to drag it, like to make couple, like multiple videos and everything, and I won't be able to enjoy it on my own. Like it'll be like, so I thought about doing, when the story mode came out, I thought about doing Nikke, like like story mode like things, but I don't have the time or the energy to do it nowadays because I have a lot of other things going on with my life. um and I barely get enough time to make videos nowadays, but I still do it, obviously. um and I think like Nikke's story, at least, like it's like one of those things that I really enjoy, just going through all the things at the same day when they're released. It's so damn interesting and it's so damn entertaining. So yeah, that's why nowadays I just make like videos like this at the end after playing the sections. I just share my thoughts. So yeah, this was one of those videos. So thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to press the like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel or you haven't subscribed, and comment down below anything you want to say, anything you want to let me know. And if you want to discuss anything about the story and all that, like it's like just let me know in the comments, because yeah, these story sections have been absolutely phenomenal, I think a lot of people might have things to talk about. So yeah, and that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, goodbye and have a nice day.